The Source Radio as we're making our way through this 9 o'clock hour, coming up to the 10 o'clock hour. But before we do, as we know everything that we've been through with this year, 2020, and as we're continuing now into this fall season, as it's mentioned, living in unprecedented times where everyone's health and safety is being put to the test, and as we enter the fall season with kids going back to school and many of us back to work, as we're starting to travel again, and the idea of keeping your family protected is more important than ever. And with that in mind, I have Dr. Chad Costley, family physician, father, and president and CEO of Blue Willow Biologicals, as he's got simple tips to keep your family safe from head to toe. As we got Doctor on this morning. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. I appreciate you having me this morning.
Absolutely, absolutely. And brought you on to continue the conversation of what it means now to kind of round this corner now with this part of the year, now kind of back into the fall where we know we start to get into more of a cold season, not just the weather outside being cooler, but the idea of more colds and everything else. We know 2020, we've dealt with COVID. But with that in mind, you're here to kind of touch base with us and give us some direction or course for what we can do to kind of stay a little bit more safe.
Yeah, thanks. I know that even in Ocala, there's winter season coming, right? It's not as cold as elsewhere, but you're certainly going to have respiratory season. So as we enter that, it's really important that we think about layers of protection this winter.
Yeah.
There's no one thing that's going to keep us entirely safe. We should certainly all get our flu shots. I would highly encourage that. As a family physician, it's one of the most important things I recommend to my patients. There's actually something new that you can add as well, and we'll talk about some other measures that you may be more familiar with, but the nose is where most respiratory infections get their start. It's well known and under-advertised, that or under-communicated, I guess, that we really need to be protecting our nose. You'll see people wearing masks, and they've got them down around their mouth, and they're down around their chin. You really need to have that mask up on your nose. In addition, I would encourage you to have a next level of protection underneath that nose. Our product that we've launched is called NanoBio Protect, and it's a skin antiseptic, but you actually apply it to the most important skin in the body for preventing respiratory infections. You apply it with a simple cotton swab to the skin inside and around your nose. And what that does is that when you touch your face, and we'll probably talk about touching face a little bit, it's going to happen, you're going to maybe deliver that germ to skin, and that skin can be really the portal entry for a lot of infections. So if you've got a skin antiseptic like NanoBio Protect on that skin, when that germ arrives, that germ can be killed. Not a panacea. Again, we talk about layers of protection, flu shots, NanoBio Protect, wearing masks, which I alluded to, and wearing them appropriately, social distancing when you can and when that's appropriate, and then hand hygiene, which is critically important. But the reason it's critically important is what I got back to. People don't get sick through their hands. Mm-hmm. People get sick because their hands are dirty and they touch their face, or more importantly, their nose. So I think all of those layers are what we should be thinking about as we going into the winter, thinking that this is a particularly dangerous winter in terms of flu season and the pandemic and everything that we're facing. So we really need to be waking up every morning with a plan for staying safe and living our lives that day.
Gotcha. And we would say start of it, just keeping mindful. The idea, we'll kind of get into it. Well, you mentioned to not touch your face as much and protect your nose. What you already mentioned with the NanoBio Protect is, like you said, trying not to touch your face, and then with that is washing your hands thoroughly.
Yes, there's no doubt. Trying not to touch your face, there's actually been some studies done on this. I don't know who thought of doing these, but they took a look at people and monitored them, and we touch our face up to 23, 25 times an hour, and probably half of those are the nose. As you mentioned, masks are critically important, but it's also true that they make your nose itch. And I've been in the ICU where after 3 or 4 hours with an N95 mask on, the one thing you want to do more than anything, almost desperately, is blow your nose. And so having that next layer of protection there is important. No matter how much we communicate, don't touch your face, it's a hard thing to be conscious of as you try to live your life. You itch, you scratch, you have a thought, you rub your nose. I mean, we all do it. And it's just going to be really important that, yes, try to be conscious of it. I think shields and face masks in some situations can help with that because you've got something tangible there and you go, oh, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to be touching. But by the same token, we're also adjusting masks, we're applying masks, and all of that increases touches. So I don't know how that all plays out, But I do know that having a next level of protection at the level of the nose for when that germ gets delivered just makes a lot of intuitive sense. And that's why we are proud to have NanoBioProtect out there as a small company trying to make a big difference.
Gotcha. Now, in that mind, too, with the idea of washing your hands, you're talking about washing them thoroughly?
Yeah, no doubt. If you go to some YouTube videos on how to wash your hands appropriately, you'll be shocked the gap between what most of us actually do and what actually makes a difference. It's 30 to 45 seconds. People say sing happy birthday to yourself. It should last that long, and don't rush it like you're trying to get through the song. Actually take your time. You want to scrub underneath the fingernails. You really want to think about, okay, I'm trying to do something here rather than just slapping a little bit of soap and water on my hand. I'm doing some scrubbing here. But again, it's not going to be perfect, because right after you wash your hands, if you go out into the world, you touch something, you pick up a germ, you're right back where you started. So unless we can wash our hands constantly, it's an important part of the puzzle, but it's not the whole puzzle. And that's why we think a product like NanoBioProtect, that when that germ gets delivered to the nose, is there to add another layer of protection, is really a critically important add.
Gotcha. And on top of that other critically part, you said wearing masks in public places?
Yeah, I think it's important. I do. Masks save lives. We know this. Doesn't mean that you have to wear a mask in every single situation. If you're socially distanced and you're outside and those kinds of things, I think common sense can prevail. However, if you're in a store, if you're inside where respiratory germs can circulate for longer periods of time, then in restaurants, those kinds of things, I think you need to get to your table before you take your mask off. Obviously, at a table, you can't eat with a mask on, so there's some practicality there. But I think we all kind of have an intuition around this, that when we might be close enough to people that what they're breathing might be what we're breathing, and vice versa. And I think that's where masks have really been shown over the last few months to save lives. And it's pretty compelling data, actually.
And when you go back into things, as far as, remember, protecting yourself and your family, a lot of conversation has been around with the flu season coming into it is the flu vaccine. And with the conversations you had with folks, do you see so much more of would you say like an uptick in the idea of people really making the notion now this year to want to get a flu shot? More so than you have in previous years?
Yeah, absolutely. As a family physician, and I've been frankly through too many conversations over the course of my career of the flu. The flu shot can cause influenza, which is a common wives' tale that you hear, which isn't true. And there's been all sorts of resistance to vaccines over the years. I think if there's one good thing that could come out of this terrible pandemic, and I hate to even say that phrase because I don't see much good coming out of this pandemic, it's that people have this sort of commitment to vaccines that is higher and more enthusiastic than it has been in the past, both for themselves, for their family. Everybody wants to be doing everything they can. So I think to your questions, people are thinking about, how do I actually wash my hands well? And do I wear a mask? And where do I wear a mask? And how do I wear a mask? Should I think about NanoBioProtect or another skin antiseptic to help add a layer of protection at the level of the nose? And I'm going to call my doctor and get my flu shot this winter. I'm not going to wait for my doctor's office to call me. I think it's a really critical thing, and we are seeing more of it. I was just in conversation with a couple of our providers at our practice in Atlanta yesterday, and without my asking, they volunteered. They said it's amazing how many people are calling us saying, how do I get signed up for a flu shot? And most years we get some of that. We're getting a lot more of it this year.
Gotcha. Excellent, doctor. And where can the listeners go for a little bit more information?
Yeah, we're a very deeply based science company. So nextlevelprotection.net will give them information both about our product and the science, as well as our buy one, give one program, where we're going to make this available to people on the front lines. So nextlevelprotection.net is a great place for information. And to receive the product, Amazon is your best choice right now. It's available on Amazon, NanoBioProtect, and it's going to be available in many CVS stores later this fall as well. So we're excited to have it out there and widely available and get the message out. So I appreciate your time today and helping us do that.
Thank you, Dr. Chad Costley. We appreciate it. More AM Ocala Live coming your way back after this.
Tanya J. Powers, America's Listening to